Check, Michael, are we about ready to go live? Right, Madam Chair, we are good to go when we hit the 2 o'clock hour for you.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, great. Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021 Washington County Board of Commissioners work session. This is Chair Catherine Harrington, and today I'm joined by Commissioners Pam Treese, Jerry Willie, Nafisa Fai, and Roy Rogers. Welcome everyone. The first item on today's agenda is board and leadership communication. Which commissioners would like to go first?
I I read the message loud and clear. I'll go first. Last week was a county college week for me. I don't have a lot to report except we also had a JPAC meeting. It had a packed agenda. There was a lot that was covered, and one of the items that was on the agenda was the regional mobility policy update. That had a lot of conversations, and I think we shared with the board. And then just also the Metro Regional Congestion Pricing Study came back, and we had a good discussion on that, and I think it's going to come back for approval for July. But I'll engage on our board in an email format to see if anybody have any feedback, and then we also talked about the Transportation System Management Operation Strategic Plan, and a lot of heavy topics. It was for the month of June for JPAC meeting, and I had, let's see, I'll go back to my notes. On Friday, one of the exciting things Jerry and I did was we were knighted the Royal Rosarians. It was my first time participating. We were both a sir and dame, and that was really a good event. I'm not sure who nominated Commissioner Willie, but I'm not sure either how I got there, but it was a really great honor to be part of that event and participate. And I think I'll keep my notes, having note issues right now. So I'll keep my update short and say lots of college presentation, college county training, and then Royal Rosarians. Thank you so much for honoring me and having me be part of your program, and leave it at that.
Well, congratulations and thank you. Jerry, what have you got? Commissioner
Yeah,
Miller.
well, I'll just follow up on that. Nafisa, thank you for mentioning that. Of course, that was it was a great event. I would imagine, well, just to give a recap, there were 47 individuals that were recognized by the Royal Rosarians. And the reason why the number was so big is because they couldn't have this program last year. So it was a kind of a 2-year carryover package. And a number of individuals for a variety of reasons were knighted. Sitting next to me was a state police officer that was a young man, probably, I don't know, mid-late 30s that had rescued 2 individuals out of a burning motorhome during the forest fires. And so they recognized him. The mayor of Vancouver was there, a city councilor from Seaside. So it was, and it wasn't all electeds. It was a whole smattering of people. Matt Savino from Channel 8 was recognized, and so it was a good, fun group. We all got a little bit sunburned because we were sitting outside for a couple of hours during that. But what the heck, it was a great program. So we do say thank you to the Royal Rosarians for certainly their commitment to recognizing folks in public safety and public service. So yeah, from my standpoint, I met with a couple of garbage haulers last week, and certainly got a perspective on not only the rate consideration that we are going to deal with on our board meeting later today, but certainly the Ridwell issue that is now surfaced kind of around the region, and they have provided me with some information on that. And so I'm sure we're going to have more conversation as that information starts to come through the GRAC, the Garbage Rehaulers Advisory Commission or Committee, Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee, that's who that is, as that comes through them. So that's going to come to our table here soon, I would guess, but we'll see. Also, a couple of weeks ago, I asked Alan to get me some information on the agritourism update. Remember, I had a constituent that was wanting to recondition a barn and basically buy the farm and the Christmas tree farm and all of that, which included the barn and have wedding events there. Come to find out in my research, and thank you, Alan, for educating me on this, but the board never adopted the expanded version of agritourism, so it's pretty much just limited to wineries. So I met with the constituent, kind of communicated that, and that even if we did, they'd be limited to 18 events per year. They were perfectly fine with that. They realized how much it was going to cost, so they kind of came back and said, well, would you reconsider this decision or this process, which we would have to ask LUT, of course, to weigh in. And LUT has it as a tier 2 priority right now, which would mean probably if we do bring it forward, it's going to be 22, 23. So I think as a commission, we obviously need to give some direction to LUT, and if there's any inclination at all that you want to revisit that conversation, then I just need to know that. If not, we obviously need to let LUT know that as well, and I will communicate to the constituents. So, Chair, I don't know how we go about having that conversation. If you've got some words of wisdom, please share that right now.
Well, I don't know if I can meet that tall bar, but I am wondering if LUT has had the opportunity to scope out the, as you mentioned, this tier 2 work, and if, we have adopting their LUT work plan on our slate for the business meeting tonight. So I think it's worth us knowing what it might take to accommodate that in the schedule. And if we were to make this something we want to move on, what would it displace in order to take that on? Ms. Angie, is it possible for you to follow up with staff and see if they can provide answers to that question this evening for our possible consideration?
Yes.
And board members, that would relate to the LUT work plan that is in our packet for, I believe it's item on the action item G1.
Yeah, great idea. Okay, thank you for initiating that, because that's a good conversation we can have, and so we'll do that tonight.
So Commissioner Willie, am I correct in understanding that the staff had prepared such a ordinance in the past, but okay, so what I'm going to need for later today is answers to what that tier 2 task is, and a moment of coverage from staff in the meeting tonight for us to discuss it and go from there. So great. All right.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Alan, you want to toss in 2 bits worth, or you want to wait till tonight?
I can just toss in right now that, yes, that's right. There was no ordinance that was in front of the board. It was just a concept, an idea whether to go forward, and it was never created in the ordinance. So that's all I have to add in. But yeah, it's a very controversial subject. You know, a lot of people like it, a lot of people don't. So it'll be up to the board to decide.
Okay, great. Well, we'll have that conversation tonight then. Thank you. Well, and to switching subjects, Salmonberry Trail, that was a fun hike that we went on to on Friday afternoon. Chair Harrington and Commissioner Treese and I, and then we were joined by Diami and Chris with LUT and Tanya, and who am I missing here? Megan. So yeah, and we had our tour guide was John Paul, who is the executive director for the Salmonberry Trail Foundation. So it was a perfect weather. We had lots of fun. Trekked out on a couple of pretty tall trestles, in which case we saw those, which one of us had heights issue. And so stayed pretty much in the middle of the trestle. But anyway, it was a good time. We had fun with that. Just a couple more things real quick. I met with Susan Mates. Remember, Susan Mates is the one that came to us and advocated for electric blowers. I met with her. She had a couple of other items that she really wanted us to seriously consider. And then kind of an update on the wood stove transit exchange program that we had, to follow up with secondary burning, which is primarily wood stoves who are outside for recreation. So if you've got a wood stove that you like to fire up in the wintertime, either in your house or on the patio, she would love to see us restrict those. That would be a challenge, I think. And so, but it was good to just talk to her. And so that's the information we went over. And then there are 2 letters that are in our packet today that we're going to have for consideration. One is the Northwest Act letter. Again, Chris is the one that orchestrated that letter and can certainly give us some backfill on Staley's Junction. And I'm hoping everybody, I mean, we drove through Staley's Junction on the Salmonberry Trail thing, so I hope everybody knows where Staley's Junction is. But that's a program that where we're asking for basically STIP money to help in the initial design and planning of that junction, which is pretty desperately needed considering the amount of traffic that is on Highway 26 heading to the coast and back. And then the other letter is the SBDC, which Tanya is going to, I think, take care of that conversation. So I appreciate the board's consideration on both of those letters. So that's all I got.
Great. We will come back to the letters. Don't worry. Commissioners Treese or Rogers, go ahead.
Am I elbowing in front of you, Commissioner Rogers? My apologies. Okay. I did enjoy the Salmonberry Trail Walk last Friday. I will say that I don't believe I have height issues, but I do believe I have reasonably responsible approach to crossing a railroad trestle with no rails or anything. So yes, staying to the center was my chosen course. It was, but it was really powerful to be out there and to see and understand what the magnitude of impact this trail can have. I mean, and I think the thing that struck me the most was that the design concept is for people of all levels of ability on some sections, but through other sections, the concept toward moving toward a natural hike in a natural environment. I really appreciated the approach to trying to make this opportunity work for all people and working for all people while protecting the environment. So thank you for the opportunity. And it was fun. I'd go again. So let me know. I attended the Community Action Board meeting on Wednesday. I also attended the 40-year celebration of Bienestar on Thursday, I believe it was, and it was a storytelling experience. Yeah, and it was the opportunity to listen to the individuals who came to this area and started Virginia Garcia, started Centro Cultural, worked with Bienestar. It was very inspiring, and it made a big impact on me. So I thank Nathan Testy for pulling that together. This week I'm going to be attending the home plate groundbreaking tomorrow. I'm also working on the development committee for home plate, so I'm doing that separately. But that's going to be a really wonderful opportunity for Washington County. I have the MPAC meeting on Wednesday night. Just a quick run through of what the agenda is, so that you know, in case you want to send any words of wisdom. We are going to be, we'll have a presentation from the Port of Portland about the seismic resilient runway discussion. And Chris Deffabaugh has been great, always she is, but she was great about providing me with some potential questions to think about, to ask about the Hillsborough Airport, other areas as well. The other presentation is going to be breaking down barriers to affordable housing, and that's going to be a panel of speakers. So if you have anything that you would like me to bring forward, please let me know. That's my report.
Great. Commissioner Rogers, how about you?
Not a lot. I attended, I know the chair was there as well, the King City State of the City last week, and Ken and crew always do a nice job. He's got, I've been working with he and his city manager, Mike, for probably 3-4 years on their movement of the urban growth boundary. You got a very challenging area. It's more than you want to hear or know, but they're trying to go out quite a ways, all the way to Roy Rogers Road. But they got a private airport in there. They've got a large community that had once no part of annexation, and they abut the river, so it's going to be almost impossible to ever get them unless their time goes by. But they've got some challenges there, and they're good people. They're working hard. So anyway, we enjoyed that. In regard to a couple of your items, I don't always like being historian, but in regard to Staley's Junction, your two previous predecessors always placed that on a high priority. We've always looked at that. So I'm enthusiastic about maybe moving that finally. If we can get some state funding, it's always been high on our agenda, low on the funding. So we've never quite made it to where we needed to go. In regard to your other item, which has to do with the agribusiness designation, that's even before Alan's time. This has been a real bloodbath on that issue. We've looked at that several times, and the issue becomes is how much commercial activity are they really going to have? And you start seeing them sell everything from trinkets from some other country, you know, because they're having some setup of things, to dustless surfaces where you got a winery next to whoever's doing what they're doing and saying you're kicking dust on me. And this is not a easy issue. This is really, for everyone who says, I like to see it, you got 5 who say, I don't want to. And so we've been through it. I've been through it 4 or 5 times, and it's a bloodbath. So I appreciate that staff's going to bring back their availability to do this, but I think it's going to have to be one of the major issues if you're going to even try to pinch it a little bit. It's not an easy tier 2, not even an easy tier 1. It's like cell towers in everybody's neighborhood. That's how big this thing gets out there. Beyond that, I don't have anything, so thank you.
All righty. Well, I'll just mention a few things from recent weeks. Just in terms of bond campaign activities coming up, I believe TVF&R is working towards having a replacement bond on the ballot this November. To replace retiring debt that they have. And the Beaverton School District is scoping out a new bond for next year, 2022, moving forward. Thank you, commissioners, for meeting last Thursday. Metro Council did take the budget note information and turned it into a resolution. I too enjoyed the Salmonberry Trail Walk. It was a great tour with Jean-Paul Bowles. Really interesting to see the area that has been or that has had some plant removal and compare that to where it hasn't been done and how quickly nature is trying to reclaim that right of way, even with all of the railroad ties still being in the ground. Pretty impressive. At the King City State of the County, the city manager, Mike Weston, mentioned that the upcoming art mural project for their park is financed in part by the CRF funds made available through Washington County. So just passing on to all of you, yet another community thanks you for that. Yesterday, I had the monthly chair mayors meeting and shared with them the homeless encampment program proposal. So they're at the ready to converse with their staff as our staff works with city staff. I also brought to their attention our proposal for our consideration and work session today for the county's pursuit of putting the American Rescue Plan Act dollars into action here in our community. It seems that across the board, all of the various cities are, I think we're all taking somewhat of a go slow approach, making sure we're mindful of where things are at, what our agency's goals are. So as Mayor Delane of Cornelius put it, we're all in the Rev Zero mode of consideration. Coming up tomorrow afternoon, I'll join Commissioner Treese in the unveiling of the new building for Home Plate Youth Services, their main building in Beaverton, moving to a different building. Tomorrow evening is the Bridge Shelter Community Meeting, formerly known as Aloha Inn. So that'll be interesting to see how community questions there compared to what we encountered with the Project Turnkey Hillsborough project. This being post-budget season, it's nice to have that work behind us. I know staff is fast and furiously closing all the documentation in readiness of a new fiscal year, and Jack and his team are looking forward to having that bell ringing moment that he enjoys. So I've got a lot of constituent meetings to catch up on that were on hold. I just want to make sure I draw your attention to the fact that we do not have an AOC District 8 meeting later this week, that next Tuesday, the evening of June 29th, is Senator Merkley's Washington County Town Hall. So he has a meeting beforehand that you're all invited to with elected officials. Also, on Wednesday, June 30th, there is a state briefing for local elected officials on state unemployment and Q&A there. So I'm looking forward to a slower couple of weeks as we ramp down this current fiscal year and enjoy the very first week of July. So that's it from me. I know one of the letters will be coming up under Ms. Angie, but is now a good time for us to call up Chris Steffenbach to check in on the letter to the Northwest Area Commission on Transportation that Commissioner Willie mentioned? Do all commissioners have access to that letter via our packets? Okay. Do any commissioners have any questions? I know for myself, I thought the memo was well done and the map as well. I have no questions. Yep, like Commissioner Rogers, I'm thumbs up. Anyone else? Okay, we're all thumbs up. Great. Let's get it signed and submitted. So there's that one. And then on the other letter, Ms. Angie, I'll let you bring that up as part of your leadership communications. So how about if we transition over to that?
Good afternoon, Chair Harrington, Board of Commissioners. So customarily, I'll start with a COVID update. We are still at 0 employees who are COVID contact, as well as 0 in quarantine due to close contact. At the end of the month, we will be eliminating our COVID absent code. This was a temporary policy, so this is expiration of our temp policy. So employees will need to use general sick time versus COVID leave. That has been our tracking mechanism to provide these updates to the board. So I'm ramping down on my COVID update, which actually feels good and a bit celebratory to be at this phase. I can see Alan smiling. This marks his last Monday at 8 a.m. meeting on COVID. So we all are feeling a bit of celebration as well, and still maintaining telework procedures within the office and ensuring health and safety protocols are in place. On Wednesday this week, I will be meeting with city managers as well as special district managers. This is our monthly connection point. At that meeting, we will be sharing our encampments update, as well as briefly talking about a convening meeting of staff to just share our ARPA strategies. So Chair, similar to conversations amongst elected, staff are maintaining to be connected in this space. And with that, I will move on to the letter that was included in your packet. And Clerk Moss, if you can promote our Economic Development Manager, Matt Craigie. So what's included in your packet is a letter of support for the Oregon Small Business Development Center Network's Community Navigator Pilot Program. And so this is the We Are Stronger Together program, and the letter is requesting that we do sign on as support to this program. Matt has been working very closely with this effort, and he can answer any questions that the board may have. One area that I would like to raise to the board's attention is Matt has received some inquiries from cities saying, Washington County, why aren't you doing this? Well, the reason that we're not pursuing this grant is due to capacity. And this is also an example of collaboration and partnership and aligning resources to meet community needs. So Matt can provide additional information on that as well at this time. Matt?
Sure, great. Thank you, Tanya. Good afternoon, or good morning, actually. No, it's afternoon, isn't it? Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. For the record, I'm Matt Craigie, Washington County's Economic Development Manager. Just a few more words here about the Small Business Administration's Community Navigator grant. So apologies for that. This is late breaking in your packet here. So this draft letter would be in support of the Oregon Small Business Development Center's network bid to acquire one of these grants. My ask today is for all of you to review and consider signing this letter of support. Just a little bit about this program. So the Small Business Administration's Community Navigator grant. They received about $175 million allocation through the American Rescue Plan. The pilot program is focused on building capacity for trusted, culturally knowledgeable partners to conduct outreach and provide business assistance to small businesses and the entrepreneurial community, and specifically those in underserved communities. So in this way, I think that it builds and complements on a model already used by the county to rely and work in close partnership with community-based organizations. The Oregon SBDC network and their local SBDC branch located at PCC's Willow Creek Center here in Washington County, and other local partners, including Adelante Mujeres, Hacienda CDC, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Black American Chamber of Commerce, Professional Business Development Group, and others are pursuing the SBA grant to strengthen the network of small business providers in our region with a specific focus on Latina, Latino, Latinx-owned businesses. And the grant would support enhanced business support services for these communities within Washington County. I've been discussing this approach with our local SBDC representative and believe that their plan and approach is in full alignment with our county efforts to support the small business community of Washington County with a strong focus on equitable economic development. In addition, I think that this approach aligns with Washington County's Business Recovery Center model and the BRC Plus proposal that we'll be talking about later during this work session. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have. I think that this is a terrific opportunity for us to show collaborative support for some of our partners and to continue to strengthen the small business network in Washington County.
Chair?
I think we should sign on as a full Board of Commissioners, given the strength of this program. And towards that end, both in the very first line of paragraph 1 and the last line of the last paragraph, I think the I needs to change to we. So commissioners, any questions or you thumbs up?
I have a question.
Go for it.
Yeah, no problem at all with the resolution and signing, but I'm still a little perplexed as to what our efforts are going to be. I mean, we ought to be really supporting the activity, but you have capacity issues. So I guess I got a little lost in what you said you were going to do and what you're going to contribute to this effort.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Later on in this presentation, when we start discussing the American Rescue Plan framework here at the county, I will talk a little bit more about the BRC and the BRC Plus proposal that we are putting forth for your consideration. Not to get too far into that description, because my colleague Dorian's going to kind of walk through it with you all. What we're talking about here today is really a bridge from COVID economic response activities to recovery activities that have more strategy. So we are proposing a continuation of the Business Recovery Center model, which has been really successful in supporting businesses across the county. And in addition, funding select organizations to provide services for small and micro businesses across the county. Again, I don't want to get ahead of the conversation here. I think that there is more that we should be doing and thinking about as we get into later on this year into 2022 and beyond. But this is a good first step towards helping support a robust small business provider network here in the county.
I just say one more thing. Be prepared when you make the other presentation to answer the basic question I have. What are we going to do, meaning the county, in terms of supporting in the activities? I'm hearing that we're all supporting, the recovery centers, and I agree to the grants and all that, but it sounded like we were kind of just washing our hands and saying, you guys take care of it. So I'm just trying to understand what we're going to do. So you don't have to answer it now.
I thought the fourth paragraph answered it rather clearly. Washington County fully supports the Portland Community College, PCC, SBDC We Are Stronger Together project and pledges to help promote the proposed services to its targeted populations and technical assistance provider partners. In addition, we'll seek opportunities to leverage the grant dollars through our own resources and capacity. So really hope to serve as the principal source for client referrals in closing.
Yeah, no, I'm reading that with you, and I understand support word, and I understand we're going to promote. I don't know what action that means. I mean, I can support something, and so maybe you'll explain that to me later, but let's just move on at this point. But I am curious, are we going to put some real elbow grease into this, or is it just that we're going to support? That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
And Chair, if I could just clarify, I'm glad you made the modifications to the I to we. Again, Bridget came to me yesterday asking if I could sign this letter of support, and I said I'd prefer to bring it to the commission and we all sign this as a group. She wasn't aware of that. We had that time availability and also the possibility of doing that. So spoke with her again today, and she's very happy that this is going to be a joint signed commission letter.
Oh, we all had thumbs up earlier, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Angie? Okay, how about you, Alan?
All right, well, thank you. Yes, this is my last public meeting as council after 30 years of representing local governments, and with Washington County, it's been particularly a great experience. I really enjoyed representing the elected officials here. They're very a lot of integrity. Always wanted to do the right thing. It's been really interesting and exciting. Not always easy, but it's been a great time. And I was gonna wear a tie today, but it was just too dang hot upstairs. So, and yesterday I cleaned out my office. So I pulled all the stuff off the walls and I got it all ready to go. And I had a nice long meeting with Tom Carr he's starting next week, and I think he'll be hitting the ground running. And he'll do a fabulous job for you. But it's great you got him a little break before he gets to go to a board meeting. I think the next one's a little bit later in July for your next board meeting. So anyway, I just make some quick comments. Thank you very much. It was an honor to serve.
Well, I hope you've prepared yourself to be the recipient of some remarks this evening.
Okay, well, that'd be very nice. Thank you.
We're not going to let you get away that easily. Thank you, Alan.
Okay.
How about you, Diane, for Clean Water Services?
Good afternoon, Chair Harrington and the Board of Clean Water Services. I'd like to update you on 3 items, but before I start, I wanted to say thank you to Alan. It's been really great working with you over these years, and we really appreciate the insight and the wisdom that you gave to Clean Water Services on things. So thank you, Alan. For the first item, I wanted to let the board know that we're working with Lara Media, and they're a dynamic, culturally responsive communication and outreach firm. And we're working with them to conduct the interviews with our partners in our region to hear about their perceptions and experiences with Clean Water Services. They're going to give us insight on how we can be the most effective and how we can look at the business that we do today, and also to look forward to what we will do in the future together. And we really look forward to sharing their findings with the board, probably in our October WEFTEC in Washington County meetings. So we're really looking forward to working with Lara Media. The second item is last Tuesday, I briefed the board on how Clean Water Services was preparing and our response to the market disruption with the sodium hypochlorite, which is the chemical we use to disinfect our wastewater. The team is doing really well in conserving our chemical usage, and the team reports that the facilities are in stable operations. Our vendor HASA has been really great to work with. They were able to meet the delivery yesterday and today. So the team has told me that we have 16 days of supply, and they're already coordinating on the next delivery. And we really appreciate the state's response, and also Washington County asking the entire region about our chemical reserves and how they could help. So it's been a really great response, and we'll continue to monitor the situation. On the final item I wanted to share, also, I'm hoping my COVID reports are decreasing over time, but we are now at 4 weeks with no positive COVID cases, and we have currently no new exposures. Yesterday, our team celebrated and reflected on our work with all of the people that contributed to our operational response to COVID. And it's really a sign that we're moving to our new normal of our operations with COVID in mind. The team is already self-reporting to be at 57% of full vaccination rate, and that's up from 5% from the previous week, and we expect more folks will be reporting their vaccination status. So the team, they're doing great. In the meeting, we had a couple of people that still needed to wear masks, but many folks were able to meet without the masks, and it was really a great, joyful event, and a lot of gratitude was talked about with the board and Washington County's support of us. So the team's feeling really good about where we are, and they're enjoying this hot weather, but we're doing well. So thank you, Chair, and thank you, board.
Go ahead, Jerry. Go ahead, Commissioner Willie.
It seems like I ask you this every year about this time, Diane, so I apologize. I should have sent Mark a question in advance. But so how are we doing with the Hag Lake reserves up there, our water level?
Yeah, I don't have the latest volume, but it's tight, at least for Clean Water Services, because we had to release water a lot earlier. We've already put in place negotiations to see if we need to access additional water from the BOR and from Ag. So we're anticipating, because of this drought that we're experiencing, at least with Clean Water Services, we're going to need to release water longer into the season. We were very thankful for the rainfall that we did get. So I can have Mark and the team report on where we think we are on this curve. I don't think it's as bad as when we had the back-to-back drought, but it's certainly, we're conserving our water and thinking about what we need to do for the rest of the season.
Great, thank you.
Good question. I'm pining for the days when it used to rain right through to July 4th, right? But whew, we'll see what happens. Ms. Angie, if I could go back, I forgot to ask you a question during your leadership update. I really appreciated receiving the policy update on the behavioral health workforce crisis. I do have some questions that I'm hoping that you and the team will be willing to entertain about shorter term and longer term solutions. But I believe in in this paper, there was a recommendation or a request from the division to ask the board's support for having staff work with our government relations team and the Association of Community Health Providers to advocate collectively for solutions to the current situation, and then interest in future meetings. So are there any things you would like to highlight or bring before us?
Yes, good question, Chair. So Marnie and team are working on getting this item scheduled for a work session. This is a multi-prong conversation. So there are the short term as far as what is staff working on collaboratively right now within the state. There are policy considerations both at the state and federal level. And then there's some longer term view. So I think it would be helpful to walk through each of those prongs. And frankly, we just don't have time during the leadership updates to do that. As this actually gets to be complicated very quickly because it also includes Medicaid as well. So. watch for that soon. We did feel it was important that you do have this just general awareness that this is an issue prior to your upcoming town hall. And if there is additional information that would be helpful for you to have prior to that town hall, staff are very willing to pull that together for the board.
Thank you. And also, commissioners, I forgot to seek your input on a letter of condolence to State Senator James Manning. I sent you an urgent email just before this work session. If anyone has not had an opportunity to look at that, I'm happy to come back to this towards the latter part of the meeting. But if everyone's all set, I'm just looking to see if you'd be willing to support this letter of condolence. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let's see. Next thing is the formal agenda for tonight's meeting. This being our second meeting towards the completion of the fiscal year. The consent agenda is chock full of items. So just to make sure we're on the same page, item 5 has been removed and is being rescheduled. Item 7 on the consent agenda, there was a revised staff requested action. Item 8, the staff requested action has been revised and the contract amendment has been included. Item 9, similarly with the requested action being updated with the contract amendment. Item number 18, the bid award was added, similarly with item 19. On item 21, there was an added resolution and order and an added attachment A. And this is on the levy for the fiscal year for road maintenance local improvement districts. Then under the action items, the first item had a revised title, and then the PowerPoint presentation was added. And then further on that action agenda, item number 5, we have received proposed amendments both from Commissioner Willie and as well as Commissioner Fye. And I want to just check here to see if there are any questions commissioners want to seek now or just hold those till this evening. Any thoughts? Okay, so we'll go over those in the meeting tonight. Are there any other questions or needs with regard to this evening's formal agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on then to the remainder of our work session agenda. We have 2 items, one for work session and one for executive session. So, yep, I'm just double checking to make sure I took care of all letters. So now we'll move on to the topic, the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA framework proposal. Clerk Moss, if you could promote all of the appropriate staff, that would be great. And welcome to you, Ms. Russell.
So thank you, Chair Harrington, Board of Commissioners, Clerk Moss. If you could also promote Marty Kyle and Matt Craigie for the board's awareness. Jack Leong is actually taking a well-deserved vacation. So really pleased that he is doing that. And so Dorian and I are available to answer any questions from his area. Before I do pass this presentation over to Dorian, Chair, you as well as Commissioner Willie have had an opportunity to meet Dorian Russell. She is our new ARPA program coordinator, but I do want to introduce her formally to the board and provide a brief background on Dorian's professional experience and also a bit about her personally as well. Dorian is an interdisciplinary public policy professional and scientist who's worked in local and federal government, academia, and the nonprofit sector. She has experience in program implementation, evaluation, policy analysis, and teaching. A bit about Dorian. She actually grew up in Washington County, and so we're glad that she's back here with us in Washington County and currently resides in Hillsborough with her wife, Aspen. So Dorian is actually already hit the ground running and has made a great impact. And I see Marnie nodding her head to our work in helping coordinate. Before we get into our conversation today, I do want to just echo the words, Chair, you said, as far as taking a thoughtful approach to the ARPA dollar distribution. So I do want to guarantee and ease the board's mind that this is really the first of several future conversations that we see moving forward. What we really are looking for is feedback on the framework and the approach from the board, because that will be the guiding document to guide future decision making. There are some initial allocations that we need to continue to look at as we are still in COVID response mode and starting to step into recovery, which we all like saying recovery versus response. So I do want to just lift that up, and I may lift that up additionally as we move forward. So from here, I will turn it over to Dorian to lead the team in the presentation.
Thanks so much, Tanya, for that introduction. I am so happy to be here, and I am so thankful for the opportunity to serve my community in this way. So thank you. I'm going to provide the first portion of this presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Marnie and Matt to give their respective portions. I will be presenting content given to us by Jack, and if in the event Tanya and I cannot answer any specific questions, I will be happy to coordinate with him and get back to you later. So in speaking about ARPA,
Dorian, you muted yourself on accident.
Oh no, can I please get an advancement to the next slide? Thank you. So I want to start by providing an overview of the entire ARPA landscape. So ARPA was a huge package of legislation that included state and local fiscal recovery funding, but also a variety of other areas of funding that will be serving our residents in a variety of different ways. So as we are looking ahead and deciding how we're going to use our allocation, it's really important to also understand the other ways that this legislation is supporting our residents. So we've seen portions of this has gone to individuals and families, businesses, to education, to health, and then of course, as we know, those funding packages for local governments. Can I advance the slide, please? So for individuals and families, there were stimulus checks. We've seen extended unemployment benefits, as well as tax exemptions on unemployment checks and expansion of the child tax credit. We're seeing emergency rental and homeowner assistance funding provided at the state level, as well as utility assistance provided at the state level. Advance, please. For businesses, we've seen expansions of several programs, as well as funding for brand new programs. So we've seen paycheck protection, paid leave credit, and employee retention credits expanded. We also see new funding coming through for shuttered venues, specifically in the performing arts, as well as new small business administration funding for restaurant relief as well. Advance, please. In education, we see a great deal of funding going to elementary and secondary school emergency funding. And what's interesting about this as well is we're seeing new equity-focused requirements now mandating that states cannot cut funding in the future for low-income areas below 2019 levels. We're seeing additional funding for early education, for homeless youth services, and also funding specifically for libraries and schools to get internet connection and also meet their hardware and software needs. Advance, please. For health. So this is an area where we are still seeking a great deal of clarity from the state. We know that ARPA funds are going to cover a variety of different public health areas beyond just the CDC and the federal government. And we're still looking for guidance from the state of Oregon for how much funding we're going to receive and also when we're going to receive that funding. So in preparation for Marnie's portion, I want to say that we will be presenting today a very cautious approach, knowing that we're leading with public health first as a priority. We are being very cautious in the numbers that we are showing you today, and we are very hopeful that we'll get additional guidance on what additional relief will be coming from the state for public health. Advance, please. So in taking a landscape view, now I want to hone in just on that state and local fiscal recovery fund portion. So in addition to all of those areas we just covered, here's a look at what local governments have received. So the US Treasury has allocated funds to entitlement units. So those units that have populations large enough to get funding dispersed directly from the US Treasury. So that includes Beaverton, Hillsborough, Tigard, and the county. Now for much smaller cities, those are considered non-entitlement units. They do not get funding directly from the Treasury. Instead, the Treasury is giving funding to the state of Oregon, and the state of Oregon then disperses that funding to the smaller non-entitlement units. Now, we know that the state of Oregon has signaled that they will not apply for those funds from the Treasury until after July 1st, and they have 30 days after that point to provide funding to non-entitlement units. And if needed, they can apply for an additional 30-day extension. So this gives us the understanding that non-entitlement cities within our county, hopefully will get their funding by the end of July, but it's very possible that this could be given in August. Now for special districts, the US Treasury is not considering special districts as entitlement units, nor are they considered non-entitlement units. And what this means is that there is no requirement for these ARPA funds to go to special districts. Now that leads to some concern. Special districts have been, lobbying the state of Oregon, trying to get a portion of the state's ARPA allocation to go to special districts. The state has not yet indicated that they plan to give special districts funding. And so it's very likely that special districts will be going to other local government partners to determine what other funding may be available to meet their needs. So that's something to be aware of, this distinction between entitlement units, those who already have gotten the first half of their ARPA funds in their pocket, non-entitlement units that are still waiting, and special districts that are in this waiting situation of trying to determine what other entities may be sharing their ARPA funds. Advance, please. So in terms of what we can use our allotment of state and local fiscal recovery funds for, this is the guidance from the Treasury for the allowable uses. There's a great deal of flexibility within each of these areas, but these are really the bucket areas. So investing in public health, addressing negative economic impacts, replacing lost public sector revenue, providing premium pay for essential workers, and investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Advance, please. So looking at the ARPA schedule, just quickly at a glance, we have received the first portion of our funding already, and a year from now, we will receive the second half. Within just that first allocation, we are proposing a two-tiered approach. So in that first tier, we're proposing continued response. So that immediate implementation, making sure we don't have any gaps in our services, continuing to respond to the emergency of the pandemic. Phase two, that second tier, we're considering a thoughtful recovery. And we're looking at a target implementation over the next couple of months and beginning to think about that thoughtful recovery. Next slide, please. So taking another step back, looking at the entire landscape of what our ARPA schedule is, we have a great deal of time. We can take a moment to assess and breathe and understand. This isn't like CARES Act funding where we're trying to get dollars out the door as quickly as we can. We have a moment to really reflect and plan. So we have the rest of 2021, all of 2022, all of 2023, and all of 2024 to spend this funding. ARPA does not expire until December 31st, 2024. So in terms of what thoughtful recovery means, we really have a moment to plan and think this through a little bit more. The scope of what we're presenting to you today is only that continued response section. What do we need to spend right now to keep things going? Like Tanya said, we plan to come back to you several times throughout this thoughtful recovery stage. So much more information coming, but what we're presenting you today is that continued response piece. Advance, please. So for our proposed ARPA program framework, next, please. So within this ARPA framework, what we're looking for you to approve today and give your insight on. So these are the values that we have determined. These are what we stand for. These are the foundational concepts that can guide us through our ARPA program work. And I'll take a moment to go through each of these in detail. They're worthy of the wait. So equity. By leading with racial equity, we can mitigate historical impacts, change persistent systemic issues, and achieve a more inclusive future. Resilience. We will foster strong organizations, strong individuals, and strong systems that focus on long-term solutions. Collaboration. We achieve better outcomes when we work together. Good governance. We are responsible stewards of public trust and resources. And we know that each of the other three are a component in what good governance means. Next slide, please. So in addition to what we stand for, we also need principles to guide how we'll get there. So these are informed by our values, and they really help us to understand how to go through this process and to implement the programs that we select. So our principles include centering racial equity, investing in public health first, leveraging multiple resources, being innovative, proactive, and strategic, seeking collaborative solutions, and working with transparency. Next slide, please. So the investment areas within the ARPA framework, these should look very familiar to you as they have been adapted and revised from the CARES Act investment areas. So we've taken what we've learned and adapted for this more focus on recovery phase. So first, protect public health and support community wellness. Second, support essential Washington County services to promote community resilience. Stabilize and support recovery of the local economy, both businesses and workers. And set aside a contingency fund to address unforeseen challenges and emerging community needs. Next slide, please. So for this first allocation of funding, this first tranche, and the first tier, continued operations, these are the target areas we have. We've developed an ARPA framework and a timeline for your review today, and we're here to meet your expectations on the framework we've created. We hope to focus on public health needs and as they continue to evolve and as reopening becomes more clear for us. And we hope to have your support in funding immediate public health response, operations, and continued operations of our Business Resource Center activities. Next slide, please. Looking ahead to the second tier, our targets are performing inclusive and strategic community outreach to develop equity-focused programs that are aligned with our community priorities. And second, we want to meet your policy goals and we want to meet your expectations in developing the program plan for that second tier. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into more detail about what the tier 1 budget areas are. Next slide, please. Before we go into this great level of detail, I want to take a moment and just acknowledge that we are building on a very strong foundation. So staff have been working throughout the pandemic for a very long time, and a great deal of lessons learned have come out of that. So everything that we're proposing here in this continued response phase, these have grown out of the lessons learned from our current response to the pandemic to date. I want to acknowledge that there have been relationships with 120 plus community-based organizations. I want to acknowledge the work of the Racial Equity Advisory Group that is currently collaborating on vaccination response and has been collaborating for the last several months. And I also want to look ahead and note to you that we plan to come back to you soon with a comprehensive community engagement plan in preparation for Tier 2. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to turn it over to Marnie to go through the details of the Protecting Public Health and Community Wellness budget areas.
Okay, thank you, Dorian. Good afternoon, Chair Harrington and Board. Just for the record, I'm Marnie Kyle, Director of Health and Human Services. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So surviving COVID. Although we're making great progress in our battle against the pandemic, it's not over yet. We continue to have new cases, new hospitalizations, and deaths each day. Yesterday in Washington County, we had 31 new cases and one new person was hospitalized. And in the state of Oregon, there were 78 new cases and 2 new deaths. So I just bring that forward to remind us all that even though we're making great progress, it's not over. In addition to the new cases, we continue to respond to and monitor outbreaks in assisted living centers and nursing homes, in schools and childcare programs, and at other workplaces where they're having outbreaks. This means that families and businesses are still suffering. They're still being placed in isolation and quarantine, and they continue to need assistance. And of course, you still hear a lot about the vaccine work that's still happening and very important, because what we do know is that 98% of those new cases are among people who have not yet been vaccinated. Many who are vaccinating, they're even now are the people that have been hesitant, people that have had difficulty accessing vaccines or difficulty taking time off of work to get their vaccination. So even though you might think, well, the numbers are really dwindling and they look small, these are the most difficult to reach folks for vaccination. It's slow. We're going to multiple sites and we're doing fewer vaccines at a time. In addition, we're spending a lot of time and energy and focus on making sure that everyone knows that vaccines are safe, effective, and they're necessary if we want to get back to normal. So just as a reminder, one of the really exciting things that happened last week is that Washington County is able to offer one more incentive. We are able to offer 10 more chances to win the county-specific $10,000 lottery and 5 more students that could win up to $20,000 in scholarships. So you can see that we have a significant request here to continue this important work around isolation and quarantine, vaccination, community education, and all the work to stop the COVID virus from spreading and causing hospitalization and death. As a reminder, Doreen did a great job, but we're really hopeful that that tranche of money that she described that is specific for public health, we know that will come. We just don't know how much. And so what you're seeing here today is the full 12-month cost that we fully anticipate will be reduced as we learn about new funding resources. Next slide. So in addition to the health impacts of this pandemic, people in isolation and quarantine also face economic hardship. Many are struggling to pay their rent, purchase food, and to receive other basic supplies like diapers and other products. Based on the needs of the families and projections of continued need, we estimate needing an additional $4.35 million. After confirmation of other funding sources, we've identified that there's a gap, a current gap of $2.47 million needed to support these families who are continue to be impacted by COVID. And again, we hope that that number will go down over time as we learn about new sources of funding. Next slide. So ensuring safety and shelter and safety. As we shared last week, Washington County has seen a significant increase in homeless encampments. In addition to the ongoing concerns related to providing humane services to homeless individuals while balancing the livability of our community, the COVID-19 impact has added the need to assure disease mitigation strategies are in place to protect the health and safety of our community. Josh Kreitz, John Cook, Sia, and I shared a proposal for supporting safe, healthy encampments following CDC guidelines and addressing concerns of the surrounding neighbors. The purpose of the multi-departmental homeless encampment strategy will be to improve the coordination between departments, cities, special districts, and our community. The cost of this proposal, which you supported, is $1.9 million. After applying the PSH funds that we know we can use for outreach and navigation strategies, the remaining gap is the $1.46 million. The next slide. Developing holistic wellness. As you know, the pandemic has taken and continues to take a toll on all of us. Many people are facing exacerbated behavioral health conditions like depression, anxiety, and increased substance abuse. Other families are facing difficulty getting back to work because they lack childcare, either capacity or access. We're proposing $5.3 million to be allocated to provide increased access to behavioral health services, childcare capacity, and to provide specialized home visiting by nurses for infants, children, and families to support those in need. Next slide. Budget summary. So I think I've said this enough times that you probably are getting it, but the full budget request is to protect the public health strategy is $40.6 million. We continue to be hopeful that this gap funding request will be reduced as we learn more about specific funding from the CDC, from the substance abuse mental health system, the federal Health and Human Services, and other specific funding that supports this work within our public health strategies. And with that, I believe I am turning it over to Matt Craigie to talk about the next section.
I think first we're going to go over Jack's section, but then we'll go to that section.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this section goes over our continuity of operations. And I put an asterisk here because we know that our needs are continuing to evolve as reopening becomes more clear. And just like with Marnie's section, this is really the best information that we have to date to provide you. And knowing that we're going to come back to you several times as we gain additional clarity, this is the best information we have today. Next slide, please. So this first section, facilities, services, supplies, and staff PPE. We know that having resilient and flexible operations is what allows us to provide essential services. And so this category includes facilities, equipment, cleaning services, and PPE for our staff who still continue to interact with members of the public. The amount projected for this is $560,000. Next slide, please. For technology support, now and in the future, we must ensure that we have complex and diverse operations that are supported with reliable technology. So this section includes computer support, technology, hardware, and software licenses, and that continuation of allowing teleworking activities. The amount for this is $500,000. Next slide, please. Communications. So we know from our experience thus far across the pandemic, timely communications are essential for our public services. And this cost is $280,000. Next slide, please. Programmatic coordination and support. We know that responding and recovering from the pandemic is going to require our commitment to advanced coordination. It's one of our values. And to fund this fully, we're seeing that this is $2.9 million. Continue, please. There are also emerging needs that we're beginning to understand from the Sheriff's Office, the DA's office, and community corrections. Staff are currently analyzing this and will come back to you with additional information, but our understanding is that the pandemic has exacerbated challenges with the court backlog. So we're learning more and we'll be doing an analysis and come back to you with more information. So that budget area is still forthcoming. Continue, please. So in summary, this portion is $4.2 million with the understanding that this will increase when we better understand some of the needs and continued operations surrounding our criminal justice system. Continue, please. Now I will pass it over to Matt Craigie to talk about economic recovery.
Great, thank you, Dorian. Thanks. Next slide. That's great. That's great. So I do want to get back to Commissioner Rogers' question, which I will answer in just a minute here. We are proposing a couple things here under the economic recovery bucket for Tranche 1, Tier 1. So, of course, in response to the COVID-19 induced economic downturn, Washington County worked with local partners to form business recovery centers. So these are aimed at supporting small businesses through the pandemic. The BRCs help small businesses access free personal protective equipment, act as a one-stop triage unit where small businesses could get select support services and referrals to other specialized business support organizations. The BRCs are geographically dispersed across the county with 3 chambers of commerce, the Tualatin Chamber, the Beaverton Chamber, and the Hillsborough Chamber, and then also Adelante Mujeres located in Forest Grove, acting as BRC host organizations. So with your approval, the BRCs under this proposal will continue to provide these important economic recovery services to small businesses throughout the rest of 2021. Next slide, please. To complement the BRCs and in recognition of the disparate economic impacts of the economic downturn, we propose funding additional small business services tailored to communities with unequal access to resources and less capacity. This work to be carried out by business support organizations would seek to address the needs of micro and small businesses in underserved communities, including BIPOC, Latina, Latino, and Latinx communities, as well as additional support for unincorporated areas of the county. Commissioner Roger, to your earlier question today about what are we talking about when we're talking about support? What does this actually mean? What is this getting down to? I have a two-part answer to that. The first part is that in this proposal, again, we would fund several support organizations that provide a range of small business services. So these services include things like small group business workshops, tailored business advising for businesses at different stages, whether they're a startup or if they're entrepreneurial activities. Intensive business development services. So you're thinking about maybe not all businesses have a business plan. There's opportunities for some of these specialized services to help these small businesses with a business plan. Business legal services. I think this is something that's often overlooked. Small businesses need all sorts of support to incorporate their business and go through all of the legal hurdles that it takes to run that business. Peer-to-peer networking opportunities are huge. I hear this when I talk to small businesses. They want to have opportunities to talk to their peers. Maybe more of that can happen in person here, hopefully pretty soon. And then another key piece here is marketing assistance, especially with an emphasis on digital marketing as we get into this new normal where there is an expectation that every place from the corner restaurant to salon has a robust online presence. So these are the types of services that we're talking about. The targeted outcomes from this work is to ensure that businesses in underserved communities don't just manage out of the pandemic, but emerge from the pandemic in a better position with the skills and tools to grow their business into the new normal. So that's the first part of my answer to that question. The second part is, and I don't want to get too far ahead of the framework and investment tier 2, but in investment tier 2, which we'll get into in the coming months here, there's going to be more opportunities for us to consider additional programs and services to support businesses and workers across the county. So for example, I would like to talk with the board about consideration of capital products to support Washington County businesses, whether it's grants or loans or some other kind of opportunity. So again, I don't want to get ahead of us here, but that is something that we will be bringing to the board for consideration going forward. So lastly, I'll say that this BRC expansion would help support the development of a more robust and interconnected business support network through capacity building for the business support organizations. And it's going to help provide that bridge from the response activities to the economic recovery efforts. Next slide. Next, thank you. So the budget for this proposal to fund the BRCs and this additional BRC plus services is $630,000 through the end of this year. So, and with that, I will turn it back to Dorian.
Thank you. So in total, when we consider protecting public health, when we consider making sure that we can continue our operations and the BRC Plus model, this comes to $45.7 million for that tier 1 portion. Advance the slide, please. So looking ahead at what our next steps are, we are focusing on public health as needs continue to evolve and as reopening becomes more clear. If you all approve today, we hope to continue with the immediate public health response, operations, and business resource center activities, again, to prevent any service gaps. We want to meet your expectations and your policy goals as we look forward to developing our Tier 2 thoughtful recovery plan. And as Matt hinted at, in terms of what's coming soon, our co-creation of a strategic community outreach proposal for your consideration, as well as additional proposals for programs and services surrounding economic recovery and community wellness. Next slide, please. What we really need from you today, the key questions, the key decision points that we are presenting to you is, 1, do y'all support the proposed values and the principles within this framework? And then additionally, do you support the Tier 1 continued operations budget proposal that we've all outlined? And at that point, I will leave it open to discussion.
Chair Harrington, before we move into discussion, I do want to just mention, as the board can see, this isn't a full allocation of the 58 million in the first tranche because there's many unanswered questions relative to the health and human services area, and also unanswered questions as far as general county operations. What also wasn't mentioned today is there is still a desire for clarity on revenue loss. The current revenue loss model within the Treasury guidance, in essence, requires us to look at revenue as Washington County as a whole, not individual special funds that have been impacted. There is some advocacy around this work, and we're hoping that additional Treasury guidance may come forward in the future, but that's also an uncertain area. I also want to express appreciation for Chair Harrington and Commissioner Willie, who they serve on the ARPA steering committee. We would not be here today without their support and guidance in this process.
So commissioners, especially you 3 who may be hearing the full presentation for the first time, Commissioners Treese, Rogers, and Fye. Questions, comments?
First of all, my compliments to all of you for the preparation and the delivery of this. It was very clear, it was very concise. It allowed for the thoughtful projection for what we've done and now what we're intending to do. So I thank you for that. I really need some time, and I want to go over the PowerPoint presentation again to kind of absorb and reflect on what we did and see if I think that there's anything missing. I don't think that there is, but thank you very much.
Commissioner Rogers.
A comment and first of all, a question. There was, Marnie, in several of the categories, you kept talking about a gap. Is that gap in the 40-some million dollars? I forgot what it was. Is that in there or is that not in there?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Rogers. So the $40 million is the gap. So we took the cost to continue all of our services that were mentioned in those strategies, and then we applied known revenue to that, and the $40 million is the gap between what we need and what we know that we're getting, but we believe that gap will be reduced as we get more clarity on specific funding resources.
Let me burrow down just because I hear what you're saying, but somehow it's not quite registering with me. The programs that you propose, what do they total in terms of budget?
I will look at that. I don't remember off the exact top of my head.
Okay, so I was just trying to get what public health, for instance, I'll take the the economic issues in a moment, but I was trying to understand the total you're proposing and what the gap is. And I understand this is over a 4-year period through 23, as I understand what's happening. So when you get that to me in a minute, this is my own individual bias. I can tell you, I think the heart of the economy is small businesses, and I am really not happy that we only put $630K towards small business when you have, as I understand it, there's some money in there, and $58 million is what's coming in. I think it's too little, way too little at 630. And it's only funding the BRCs through the end of 21. I think we should be serious about it and fund them at least through 22, put the money there aside so that the economic growth, I understand the public health issue. I've never failed with supporting that. But quite frankly, this economy is not going to get off of its backside if we don't put people back to work. And putting back to work, these BRCs have done an excellent job in doing that. So I would be much happier with up $1 million plus. I mean, we've got 104. If we can't invest in the engine of the economy, it's a small business, the engine, then I'm disappointed with the numbers. So that's my bias.
If I could jump in for a second, Commissioner Rogers, I really appreciate your comment. I do want to say that this is just what we're bringing forward to you today, and we do anticipate definitely before the end of the year, and Matt can speak to this further as well, but we see this as a series of conversations, and certainly we want to get back to you right away with small business support. So this is, purely where we're at today, and we anticipate having more tailored information and more specific information for you over the next couple of months, and certainly before the end of the year.
I appreciate that, but let's get north of $1 million to even be talking seriously about doing something for the economy.
I'd like to follow up on that also. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers, for your comments. And building on what Dorian was saying here, we would like to come back very soon to talk about more that we can be doing to be supporting businesses and workers and households and all of the things that folks need to get that better job. And I will say that I've been very impressed with, in the short time that I've been here at the county, with the collaboration within departments at the county, talking with Marnie's group about housing services and other types of services, and conversations with folks about workforce development and how it's not just about the job, but it's about having access to housing and having all of the other things that you need to have a healthy, productive life. So we will be coming back to the board very soon with more proposals, and I appreciate your support for economic recovery efforts.
Commissioner Fye.
Yeah, I'll add in. I absolutely agree with Commissioner Rogers on this. I think we need to beef up on our support to businesses. And especially, I will say it, we brag about Washington County being the economic engine of Oregon.
No, we've talked multiple times about how that positioning hurts us in the legislature.
It does hurt us, but at the end of the day, we are also have a lot of businesses that are thriving. And I think we need to contribute and support those businesses. And also we know that businesses have been impacted as well. I'm a public health professional, so I do support any investment that we can make to public health because it will really help us in the long run. But I also think we need to really, come back what Commissioner Rogers said, and really come back with a stronger number than what we've seen today. I also think we like to consider the LOA Association, the LOA Business Association, to be considered to those groups as well. And for the county staff, to engage a conversation on how to support that. I hear a lot of folks in my district talking about how they feel like they're the stepchild or being treated. And while we can say, they can apply this resources, even if they apply the Beaverton Chamber of Commerce, some of that funding, it's not enough to go around for folks in Aloha, in Cooper Mountain area, and Reedville area to also service the folks in Beaverton. So I would like us to consider the Aloha Business Association and even just engage a conversation to look like what kind of support they need, and to come back with, you know, to figure out how, $500,000, it's very low. I agree. So those are my comments. Other than that, this was really a great presentation. I echo what Commissioner Tree said, and nice to meet you. I look forward to meeting you face to face, both of you, Matt and Dorian. I haven't, so great job, and good job, Marnie. I look forward to seeing what you do with all that funding and how you continue to support community organizations and really help mitigate and provide some comfort and release to our community.
I have one more question I forgot to ask, and I apologize. And that had to do with Clean Water Services had some funding requests, and I didn't see that considered in this point. Did they not meet the criteria and you swept them aside, or poor choice of words? I didn't mean it that way. I mean, did you not feel that they met what we're trying to accomplish, or what happened to their requests?
So Commissioner Rogers and I would ask actually Diane to jump in. I think I want to step back and take a moment of clarity. This is really the first conversation of several conversations. So the point in time where we're at, absolutely, we know there needs to be more investment within economic development and have robust community engagement around that to understand what is going to be beneficial to our business community. Commissioner Fye, relative to the Aloha Business Association, I can indicate that Matt Craigie has been in correspondence with them. Thanks for the thumbs up and verification. So unfortunately, with all the work that's been happening, we just don't have the time to share that. Moving forward, Dorian will be sending routine updates to the board so the board can be updated on this progress. Relative to special districts, we are currently working with special districts. I do have a formal request from Clean Water Services, and we are working with our other special districts to understand what their needs are. At the same time, continuing to get the clarity from the state if the state is going to allocate the ARPA dollars to the special districts. So that's where I would just ask that we think about this as an incremental rollout, and there will be additional requests coming back to the board. So this is really just a starting point. I do want to indicate that all special districts have, outside of TVFNR, have indicated that they do have needs, that if the state is not going to give them funding, they would be requesting that the county help support. So Diane, I don't know if you have any further comments you'd like to make on that.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Commissioner Rogers. We did submit a request in the amount of $2 million for a water, sewer, stormwater, so basically a water utility revenue replacement program and ratepayer assistance program. What we found with the first round of ARPA that we were able to distribute 450,000 of the CARES Act, funding to about 1,100 households, but there are still households that are more than 60 days in arrears, and there's still about $2 million behind for both cities and special districts. We believe that a more proactive business process of clearing out the arrears on the customer accounts is necessary, as it appears the original process of handling this as an application process for assistance likely provided a barrier of support. So we did some analysis on the accounts that are in arrears, and they tend to be in areas that are in communities of color, and they seem to be more disproportionately falling behind in payments. And I think that's really a sign of how economic recovery has been uneven with the lower income owners that are experiencing a higher rate of unemployment and in a higher rate of default. And we are concerned that we don't want to put them behind in terms of their credit rating as we go forward to try to do some collections. So we're trying to be very mindful of that community and what they need in terms of support through this pandemic condition. So the special districts that do water, sewer, and stormwater is who this proposal would support. So we really appreciate any consideration by the Board of Washington County to take a look at the proposal that we did submit. And I'm happy to answer any questions about this proposal.
So we are currently collecting all the requests from the special district, and we'll be bringing those forward to the steering committee at our next meeting, and then funneling that to the board thereafter.
Thank you, Tanya.
Commissioner Willie, what have you got? Anything?
Well, I was listening to Roy and the question, and certainly, I guess what I've been relating this process to so far, because I too was saying, okay, I know that $600,000 isn't the only money that we are going to dedicate to business recovery. So, so I was likening it to, I guess, the process that we did with the CARES money, where we went through and we identified kind of the specific areas of health and human services and the other areas that were a top priority and certainly big dollar items. And as we went through that process, then we also began to, and once we'd identified that, then we began to talk about what kind of money can we put in the economic development side of things, and the grant program and all of that. So I guess that's where I've been patiently waiting for us to get there. And honestly, probably would have had a little bit more clarity that our meeting last Friday was canceled primarily because I had a conflict in my calendar, and I had to prioritize the other meeting that I went to. So so we're one meeting behind here, and that's where we were going to talk about the economic development stuff. So I'd encourage you to stay tuned. I certainly hear and agree with your comments.
Okay, well, I'll go last. I just have a couple of questions. On the slide where you talk about, we're in the section of continuity of operations. You have the sheriff's office, district attorney, and corrections operations. And it just dawned on me, well, gee, what about juvenile justice? That's been more complicated here. And my apologies for not catching that sooner. I also think that under the sheriff's office, it's been very beneficial to date as we've had listening sessions, town halls, and budget public hearings for our community to see a differentiation between the jail and patrol. And they're very different costs. I mean, if we don't get to the point where the vast majority, or at least 70% of adults in custody being vaccinated, then the jail capacity is still going to be limited, which is going to impact the courts, and it just snowballs. So unfortunately, a bit of a rat's nest there. I've asked a question before, and I don't think I've gotten the answer yet, on the BRCs and why we continue to distribute free PPE. The shortage is gone, right? Yeah, it's a matter of money, and heavens forbid, if we still have some in inventory, great, put it into use. Even last year, we had a real shortage of availability for everyone. Not so the case. I mean, there's practically a fire sale on KN95s. And this is the second year that our seasonal farm workers are set up. So I think I wonder a little bit about stressing that point. I I, for one, am all on board with keeping the business recovery centers going. You know, part of what we supported is, you know, closing everything down meant that our chambers and other groups who support small businesses were really at risk. And we realized that there were common interests in keeping them whole and making sure that they were continued to play a pivotal role in making sure that business owners had great access to resources and technical assistance for seeking the variety of funding that occurred then and that will be going forward in the next couple of years during this whole economic recovery phase. So I'm all for keeping them going. But I think some of our phraseology could use some improvement, such as the budget summary. You know, there are 4 different locations for the business recovery centers. Fine, not a problem. But you have a whole slide on, if we could advance to that slide. The slides aren't numbered, so I can only give you a packet number. Slide or page 43 of 49. See that title? Remember that title. Now go to the next slide. That should be the title for the last line item instead of BRC plus services, right? What is the outcome? What is the category? It's specifically for micro and small business support, right? That's what I want to see. Because you have a great slide in terms of what you're planning on doing. I'm all on board with that. So, and then this whole category total is, you know, on your earlier slide for economic recovery. So I think that's great. And that phrase on economic recovery comes to the slide after this, where once again, shorthand BRC plus. No, it's economic recovery. That's where we're really trying to get. I appreciated in the various places where you talk about the uncertainty, because I know that we have multiple team players who are in communication with the US Treasury, with state experts to understand how there might be other programs to achieve these goals. One aspect that the economic recovery effort covered through the CRF program that we've not had the opportunity to target this go around is on workforce. You know, in my mind, I have certain limits in terms of continuing to invest and reinvest and more investment for small businesses when we are just one player in that, right? But my end goal is, how do we make sure that everyone has the access to a really good paying family wage job? And we have a lot of folks who've said, you know, I am not willing to earn really low wages at this low value job or multiple part-time jobs. I want to seek training. And the CRF workforce programs that we partnered with Work Systems, Inc. allowed for that training to those on-ramp programs. So those are really vital. So I'm hoping that we'll look more to that investment as opposed to capital investments that you were intimating moving forward. But I realize this is just the first step. So I just thought I'd contribute those comments. I think they're in contrast to some of what you've heard from other board members at this stage. So on the decision points, I haven't heard any commissioner reflect any disagreement on the proposed values and principles. So I take that as a thumbs up for those. I see head nods. Okay. And then support for the proposed one continued operations budget proposal. I think what we're hearing here is some additional refinement questions. We understand sort of, I don't want to call it maximum funding or whatnot, but we appreciate that you've put expected investment needs clearly before us while you continue to work more on that clarity and come back to us in an iterative process so we can see what more can we do with this limited $58 million over these next 24 months. Commissioners, does that sound reflective of, without re-summarizing your specific questions and future needs? Okay, Commissioner Willie's the only head I don't see nodding. Okay, there it is. Are there any closing comments that commissioners want to make for future needs, questions?
I just want to add that I know that Matt is talking to Aloha Business Association, and I'm certain that you're also talking to others like the Raleigh Hills Business Association. So, you know, it's my job to advocate too. So, so I'm just throwing that out there. And thank you for your work, Doreen. It's great to meet you, even if it's just on camera.
Thank you. And if I may answer a couple of your questions, Chair, thank you so much for the feedback. I did want to mention that I am working with Aaron Calvert, and we have reached out to Juvenile Services to see what their proposal is as well, but are still waiting to hear whether they will have a proposal and how much that will be. I really appreciate all of your comments about consistency in our language use. It's going to be incredibly important as we communicate with the public. So thank you. I appreciate that. And then in addition to the conversations about reaching out to different business communities, I do want to give Matt some credit for the work that he's done in thinking about onboarding for workforce development. And that is, you know, as we've mentioned before, as Tanya really underscored, this is the first of many conversations. This is iterative, and there will be content before you very soon on workforce development, but there's only so much we wanted to provide you today, and just making sure that we keep things up and running. That's really what this conversation is. And more programmatically, we will get in front of you again very soon. And we are so enthusiastic to hear all of the different topics that you're bringing up, because you're really checking a lot of boxes for the things that we've already thought about and that we already intend to bring to you again. So thank you so much for that.
Well, this is really our first step in the keep us going part of, right? Lift us up, keep us going. Let's keep going. Great. Thank you to the team for pulling all of this together. It's a really well-organized, cross-functional, cross-department set of folks here that have put this together. I know I've been really impressed and pleased that we, the Board of Commissioners, have them to rely on and bring different ideas forward. Any closing additional comments? Ms. Angie?
No, thank you for the time, and thank you for recognizing staff's work. And we look forward to continuing conversations with the board as well as our community and community partners.
Great. So our last item for our meeting today is going to an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub D. And I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me to say what all that means.
It's for litigation, and again, nothing that is said here, if the press is present, shall be reported on.
So moved.
Do we have a second? A second from Commissioner Treese. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye or raise your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Clerk Moss, if we could
Yes,
get
well,
all the appropriate
uh,
panels. Oh, no,
Madam-
we have another link, right?
yes, we do. So
Great.
I will see you over there momentarily.
Thank you so much.